Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
I'm John.
Tonight's date is Monday, November 7th, 2022, and we're going to talk about the Buckeyes' victory over Northwestern. Uh, Sorry about the voice, a little under the weather. Knocked out my voice this weekend, so uh, we're going to trudge through this. So the Buckeyes won 21-7. Um, you know, definitely well below what both of us said. It was crazy winds on Saturday. I mean, what did they said? There was some gusts that were up to 80 miles per hour. So, I mean, which is crazy to think about that they had gusts that, uh, that hard. You could definitely tell it was nuts. I mean, either you were going against it and it looked like you were, I mean, it looked like everybody was running slower to begin with when they were going against it. And then, or you were
Hmm.
going with it and the ball was sailing about 30 yards. So, I mean,
Right.
it was one of those days.
Yeah,
But
I mean, yeah, definitely just one of those days that wasn't quite what you expected, but that's what happens sometimes over this part of the country.
yeah. Um, so, but 21-7, I mean, it's obviously Northwestern is not at that level. If the weather was a little better, obviously I think Ohio State would have scored a lot more points. I think the kind of the big thing that kind of still gets me, and I know it gets you too. It just seems like even in a situation like this, the running game should be able to work because you know even if they know it's coming, but again, very hard. It was hard to establish the run as the game went on. Running game did get a lot better. Once I think they kind of realized that there wasn't going to be a lot of throwing, that and then you saw Stroud, actually use his legs some in both the design runs and in um, just scrambling some, and so that was a good sign. And so once they kind of got the running game going, was it perfect? No, but they did a lot better as the game kind of went on.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me of a game against like a service academy. That's kind of like the best way I can think of it is like a team that's just dedicated to running the ball. They knew they weren't going to throw on you. They had a plan for your throwing. I mean, even though it was just kind of like the weather was their 12th defender out on the field, but they were just, playing keep away, trying to take all the possessions away from the game. So obviously, talent wasn't equated. I mean, Ohio State should have been able to run a lot more effectively on a bad run defense. So there is no excuse for that, but that's kind of what the way I think of it, like Pat Fitzgerald knew going into the game, exactly what his plan was for each side that he had the ball. Maybe Ryan Day wasn't as prepared as what Fitzgerald was. It kind of felt that Ohio State was the least prepared team on the field, but that's kind of like what I think about. It's just those times that, we've played Navy in the past, a triple option team that is just hard to get the ball back from them sometime and the clock just you lose it. It runs away from you because of just how long they're able to hold on to the football. So that's kind of what I felt about the game, but still, I'm still gonna say there's no excuse for not being able to run on these guys. But just like I said, the weather was kind of like their 12th defender out there.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, like you and Fitzgerald. I mean, he told the ESPN guys prior to the game, when they had the wind at their back, they were going to try to play with more tempo, and they obviously did. When they were going against the wind, they were going to really slow the game down, which again they obviously did. It seemed like Ryan Day's maybe strategy was that he just kind of wanted to keep on going because he wanted to try to get into a groove, and then regardless if the win was going against them or not, um, it's just I think it took Stroud. I mean, the passing game really wasn't there the whole game, but it did take Stroud a little bit to kind of get used to the win situation because
Mhm.
you needed to really throw the ball hard when you were going against it. And he started doing a little bit better. They started doing a little bit more shorter routes for him in those
Yeah.
situations. And then on the opposite side, it was like, put too much air under it or whatever, try to hit it hard, it was going to sail on you. So again, it just took him a minute to kind of get going, you know. But I was very pleased with the runs. I mean, that's was really, if you think about it, kind of the difference in the game because they, even though at a point after that one drive, it just seemed like Northwestern couldn't score on them, but
Right.
the game was just so close that any bad thing that went against them would be kind of like could put them on upset alert big time. And if Northwestern got into the end zone, so those runs that Stroud had, you know, kind of saved the day for him in a lot of ways if you think about it, because he was something that Northwestern was absolutely not expecting.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Ohio State, they did have a couple, like he did do a pretty good job of actually being variable out of the formations that people had, critiqued him on running. They ran a lot of different, like, as far as, actual running plays, they ran a lot more running plays than what they had been. They did a lot more out of the pistol than what they had been. I mean, they had two different, bootleg play actions that, credit to Northwestern. I mean, they played very disciplined football, and the play was designed both times to go to Cade Stover on a bootleg, and the Northwestern, I don't know if it was linebacker, end, safety, whomever it was, they stayed right with him the whole time. I mean, they were right there behind him. So credit to them for being very disciplined, because that was something that, Ohio State obviously knew that they weren't going to have much success of running deep routes. So that was something that they thought probably could have been a killer if it was open, and it wasn't either time. And then there were what? I mean, I think they only said three drops, but I mean, CJ, with all factors considered, he didn't throw the ball half bad. I mean, there were a lot of times that it was to his receivers and they didn't come up with the play.
yeah, definitely, definitely agree with that. That you know, th- there was I mean, there was some bad plays by the receivers. I mean, Fleming and Stover, like you said, just I mean, it was uncharacteristic in a lot of ways. Um, you know,
Like Buka
Mar
dropped a touchdown. I mean,
yeah,
sure, touchdown.
I mean, outside of Marv, I mean, everybody else kind of left something to really be desired out there. Again, they were shorthanded with the running backs. Mayan was there. Trey stayed home. So that had some things. But again, when Mayan looked good on some plays, and on other plays, it was like Northwestern was waiting for him. It wasn't like, was that a missed block? Was he just not moving to the hole quick enough? I mean, I think, just a lot of mixture of a lot of things. Are they being a little too predictable in some spots? Are they running the exact same play out of the exact same formation? I mean, there's a lot of things going on, that are just out there. Um, so yeah, the running game was definitely, I would say, a concern offensively. Defensively, I don't really have necessarily a concern per se.
Mhm.
It was the most rushing yards they gave up. Um, so is this a was is this an outlier, or is this now a concern going forward? We will see over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, that makes you a little nervous with Michigan coming down, the barrel at you. But right now, I'm just gonna say it was just an odd day, and they caught Ohio State in a few looks, and was able to exploit it.
Yeah, I would say defensively, Ohio State had more missed tackles than they would want. Defensive ends probably played their worst game as far as, setting the edge, and they really bit a lot on, the zone reads and let the quarterback get on the outside of them. Times that, when they were going with the Wildcat, they were going out of a pretty much a goal line set, didn't even have their quarterback on the field. And maybe took Knowles a little too long to react to that, but I don't really think so because it didn't really hurt them. So I mean, they got the one drive, but they got a lot of yards on that, and I think Knowles came back pretty quickly with his different looks. More linebackers on the field, bigger personnel. Um, but I mean, I think if anything, that was just it. I don't know if I'm necessarily concerned about their run defense with Michigan in a couple weeks. It's just how quickly can you identify if Michigan's going to start going big packages and running on you, you can get the right personnel in there. And I think Knowles did a fine job. I mean, we saw against Michigan last year that Combs made no adjustment whatsoever to what Michigan was going to do, and it just wore on our defense. And we all know how it ended in how that second half went against the run. And I don't think this really gave us much reason to be concerned, except for a bad team had a decent day running on us,
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
and they also weren't passing the ball. I mean, you would have sure you would love for that get out of there without giving up all 100 total yards, but it is what it is. I mean, it's not. I'm not too concerned about it. Tackling bothered me more than anything, and bad gap assignments.
Yeah, they had a couple bad angles too. Some of the stuff maybe we saw a little bit of last year, but again, I think in general they've been a lot better in those positions this year. So again, is that just an outlier of a game?
Yeah.
So I'm not really too concerned. Um, I mean, I know there wasn't necessarily a lot of offense, but I mean, you have a player of the game offensively, and that you want to throw somebody at least that maybe you thought did something that you weren't expecting. Maybe I don't know. I mean,
I'll say Mayan. He did, he had a big run and he toughed out a lot. I think there's only two choices for offensive player of the games, though. I'll take him. I'll let you have the other one.
yeah, I'll just say CJ just because, and he did the stuff that a lot of people have been asking him to do, and Ryan Day did some of the stuff that a lot of people. I mean, he kept a designed run, on a zone read. He took off. They even ran a power play, and where I think he got like 4 yards. I mean, he had a couple scrambles. So, like,
Yeah.
and he had a couple scrambles last week too. So, I mean, and that's the thing. If somebody's got to give it to you, I know you like throwing the ball down the field, but I mean, there's a lot of times this year, and I know he's not the fastest guy in the world. He looks uncomfortable doing it, but if they're going to give you 10 yards, take the damn first down, and move
Exactly.
on. Just move right to the sideline and get out of bounds. I mean, it was BS on that first one he had, and they didn't give him that first down on that one. I mean, maybe the ball was still over out of bounds when he crossed out with his feet. I don't know, but it sure as hell looked like it was good to me.
That's what I thought too. I mean, like you said, it may be when the ball when he goes out of bounds, it's behind the sticks, but it was pretty damn close.
Yeah,
I thought he got it. I mean, it looked up. It looked clearly like a first down to me, but
yeah.
he did have it in the wrong hand.
I think I mean, just real quick back onto the concerns, and then we'll move. I mean, we knew that the discussion on the game necessarily wouldn't be too long, but we'll talk about some of the other games here for a little bit that happened around the country. But I think one last thing I kind of want to mention is again, it just kind of seems like when Day gets out of his head, he really starts panicking a little too easy. And I don't know necessarily if I like that. I mean, everybody knows how good of a play caller he is, but when he gets off script, it gets really weird for him at times. And I think like he needs that halftime to kind of sit down, cool down, and kind of figure out, what he's doing. And it was like, and I don't know, maybe if just teams were just if he just caught a lot of teams off guard in 19, but it just never felt like that in 19. It was always like, you know, the first quarter was used to kind of gauge the other team, and then the second quarter was, the explosion,
Yeah.
and he was ready to go. Once he figured out what they were trying to do, he was ready to, tear it apart. And it seems like it kind of, if it's not working right away, it takes him really. it kind of takes it through the first half until he really starts getting comfortable with it. So I guess I mean it's nice that he's making adjustments. That's very positive. I'd be really nervous if he was making no adjustments and they were just kind of like grinding these things out. But it just seems like he was a lot quicker before. And like I said, new coach, maybe he just got a lot of teams off guard, and maybe
Well,
now that they got a few years of stuff on him, that maybe there is some tendencies in there that defensive coordinators see that the naked eye, observer like us just don't see.
yeah, I mean, you know, great, strong offensive line paired with J.K. Dobbins really helps a lot of things stay on schedule. And 2019, and Justin Fields that picks up first downs with his feet. I mean, I think that's a lot of the problem is just not being able to be in short yardage on second down. That really, has hurt the team over the last couple years. But I mean, I have no doubt Ryan Day can fix it. It's just like you said, it takes a little bit longer the last year or two to fix it. Maybe because he just doesn't have those types of guys that that keeps everything on schedule. That way they can break. Because they've picked up their second or third first down of the drive. Now you got someone that can break the big play because the defense is starting to get worn down a little bit.
Yeah, no, just I mean that's just kind of just an observer, just something I've observed over the last couple years, and it just seemed like maybe it would be a little different this year, and there was definitely a point of the season where it felt like it was different, but you know Penn State obviously Iowa, Penn State last couple weeks, there's some better defenses they played against. Um,
Yeah.
and this week was just I mean, it was really just that was just crazy weather. And I know a lot of people think it's an excuse, but I mean, I guess unless you play in it, it's it is what it is. And there was a lot of crazy weather around the country. You
Yeah.
know, it's it's unseasonably warm, but there was a lot of rain and wind around the country. So I mean, it wasn't like we were the only ones that struggled in spots. It was just that it's just it is what it is.
hmm
You
Yeah,
got
and yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what tomorrow's playoff committee, rankings look like. 'Cause yeah, it was a rough week for a lot of teams, and obviously, we did play the worst team, but a lot of teams did not have success on the road this week.
yeah. You know,
Michigan did pull away from Rutgers in the second half, but they were losing at halftime. Alabama, of course, lost on the road. Tennessee lost to Georgia on the road, so I would assume Georgia is going to be the new number one on the committee. Um, who else? Oh, Clemson lost on the road in South Bend. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. I think well, I mean, you got anything more you want to talk about with Northwestern, or you want to talk about some of these games?
uh, I don't know. I mean, Northwestern is kind of like really, it's what you teach that we gotta be tougher. I mean, when people know we're gonna run, we gotta be able to run at them. Um, Maybe learn some stuff from the play calling for Day, learn some stuff from play calling and toughness from players, but all in all, burn that tape. That
Yeah,
that was something that no one wants to watch again.
yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Um, moving into some of the games we saw, I think the interesting thing, what we're gonna see tomorrow with the playoffs, is Ohio State still gonna be two, or is Michigan gonna jump them? I mean, that's I think that's number two and three right now, just
Yeah,
depending where they decide to spot everybody. Um, and I think obviously TCU I think will be they even struggle some in their game.
sure,
So I
yeah,
mean it always seems like whether it always seems like it's either the last week of October or the first week of November where like two two or three big time teams go down. That's like kind of where the chaos all starts hitting. Um, so I mean, it's definitely was not a surprise. I mean, Notre Dame. I mean, they just smoked Clemson for the most part. I know Clemson scored a couple touchdowns at the end to make it look a little bit better, but I mean that was all Notre Dame that whole game, and That was good to see. At least, I mean, you could say what you want. Ohio State doesn't need help; they just need to win out. But it's something. At least it goes on the resume that Notre Dame's kind of showing up now down the stretch,
Yeah.
and they're putting up a fairly good season from a rough start. So and that was a good win for them.
No, I agree. Um, what was the most surprising game to you? Let's start there.
Even though I picked them to win, I mean, I didn't really expect LSU to beat Alabama. I mean, that was kind of like, no, it was a hell of a game. I mean, there's obviously a lot of points, but I knew early in that game, I'm like, this is going to be a close game. LSU's going to stick with them.
That okay, so that was what I was going to ask. I mean, like there's times, freaky things at home, freaky things with the weather. Did you expect the game to look that even though between the two squads?
I wasn't really sure. I would say no, that
Because
I
I
felt,
mean, it wasn't like a couple lucky plays. Like LSU, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they played better than they played better than Alabama the whole game.
I haven't watched a lot of LSU this year, so I wasn't really sure. Like, tennis, like I watched a decent portion of the A&M game. I felt like A&M should have beat them. Obviously Texas should have beat them. Tennessee did beat them. So I'm just like, is LSU of if they're kind of like equal talent and stuff like that, this could be an opportunity for them to win. I didn't necessarily. I mean, I know, like I said, I picked them and stuff like that, but in the back of the head, I was kind of regretting it, and I'm like, I shouldn't have went with that. But I'm like, but if LSU, if this gets into a dogfight and LSU is actually a comparable team to them. We've now seen where they have lost, two other games where they should have lost. I'm like, this is not Nick Saban's best team,
Mhm.
obviously. So I'm like, there could be a situation, Baton Rouge is a hard place to play that, and let's face it, as much as I've liked to give Brian Kelly crap over the years, he's the best coach that they've had probably since Nick Saban in 2004. Like, so, like
Right.
that. I mean, I think he's a better. I mean, Miles, I know has a title, and Ogeron has a title, but I have always, I think Brian Kelly's a better coach than them. And
Yeah.
so, like, I've felt like if they could keep that game tight, that could be a very interesting game, and they could pull it out. I was surprised though that I felt LSU was very equal in the game. They were not out of place at all in that game, were and they had there was no lucky breaks. I mean, um they just outplayed them. They played very good defense. They played good offense when they had to. Alabama had a hard time with the quarterback, and they were an opportunity at the end of the game to win it.
Yeah, and they got the Bryce, I mean, I'm not going to say like easily, but they got the Bryce, a decent number of times in that game. I mean, I was very impressed with what LSU came to play with that day. Um, so obviously, for me, I would say I'm not necessarily, even though I think I did say they were going to win outright. I'm not surprised Tennessee lost to Georgia. I'm not surprised Tennessee didn't, that Georgia looked dominant against Tennessee. I'm surprised that Tennessee absolutely could do nothing though against Georgia. And then, weather got bad and neither one really could do much to the other one. But my God, I mean, for a team that, their whole success is predicated on downfield throws, or at least that's what sets them up. And they had no idea. Like they had nothing for Georgia's delayed blitzing. I mean, Georgia just they killed Hooker. Like
Yeah,
I am surprised that they made him look so just average. I mean, from the year that he was having, like people talk about Stroud when he gets pressure, gets people in his face. I mean, Hendon Hooker looked lost in that game. It just Georgia was doing whatever they wanted to it. I mean, all they had to do was, send a delayed blitz here and there, and they were getting to him. And hell, I mean, Georgia's still the team because their
yeah,
defense, when they needed them most, people, they lost all this firepower on defense, and they're going to go against the best offense that they've seen in 2 years. And hell no, man, they weren't having that crap. They're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get his ass on the ground, and he's not going to throw all over us doing that.
yeah,
So I was a little shocked when that Hooker, Stroud, and Young, which was lucky for Stroud, of course, but they all had very average games, below average games on the same day.
No, I think Georgia definitely put the whole country back on notice that the national title. I know it's in Los Angeles, but technically it's going back through Athens, man.
Oh hell yeah, yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
and that's all teams. That's us. That's Michigan. That's whoever they're going to play in the SEC title game. That's TCU.
Yep.
It's just that was a very impressive defensive performance, and it made me surprised. Very surprised Tennessee didn't try him a little bit more down the field, is because they did have a couple spots there where he just missed the wide receiver that was open. I was surprised they didn't try it a couple more times to see if they could hit one.
Yeah, I thought so too. They had 6 sacks on him in that game. I mean, it was just it, I mean, they punished him, man. That was about as dominant of a performance that you could see, and make the number one team in the country look very average. And this isn't the show to go pick fights with other fan bases unless it's Michigan. But I mean, that was a slice of humble pie that some of these Tennessee fans kind of deserve, to be honest with you, man. They were talking a lot of smack, being ranked number one for the first time in freaking forever. I mean, they won a title in '98 and they haven't done much since then. So I don't know where a lot of them got off coming at me about Ohio State not deserving where they were. I'll grant Tennessee deserved it for the win that they had, but it's a little too soon to be talking like that.
Yeah, I will say that we kind of mentioned this on the last show. It was kind of interesting how he was going to react to it, how he was going to be able to take it. I mean, every other coach, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Dabo, and Day, and even Harbaugh. I mean, Harbaugh's had several. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, yeah, he played the playoffs last year, but he's had other opportunities where he's been in the top four.
Yeah,
So every one of these coaches, have been in this level of you know success before in the playoff era, and so and Heupel, he made a couple comments last week where I'm like, man, you gotta that ain't coach speak. I mean, it's coach speak, but it's not coach speak, and the
right.
rest of them are all doing coach speak, man, and they've all kind of been there, done that. So I was very interested how he was gonna take it, and it just seemed like that. Georgia and Kirby Smart, they were out to like prove everybody that they're still the big dogs on campus. So no pun intended, I guess, but that they were, yeah,
But
it
they
was
are.
very impressive.
All right. I mean, I know we don't put much stock into the playoff rankings until the final one, but if you had to say a top six tomorrow, what would your prediction be?
Um, I'm gonna say number one is gonna be um, Georgia. I'm very torn on number two, number three, just because I think we'll stay at number two, but I think it's going to be very close that Michigan will be three. But I think there's going to be a lot of discussion in the committee should Michigan be number two. And, you know, they did pull away a lot better than we pulled away. Rutgers is a better team on paper than Northwestern is. So I would say two, Ohio State, Michigan three, TCU four. Um, and I'm going to say Tennessee. I want to say Tennessee's probably going to be six, and I'm going to say Oregon is going to be five. I think that's what I'm going to go with. That I think Oregon's being very, very impressive. They needed a couple teams to lose for. I think if some teams didn't, if a couple teams lost and the other couple teams didn't lose, they would have a hard time getting past that Georgia loss because that was such a decisive loss. But I think that now a few more teams have lost. Plus, it kind of helps Georgia out. They'll be like, well, they just blew out the number five and six teams in
Mhm.
the country. So,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are definitely the number one team in the country.
How far up do you think LSU can move? I mean,
You were,
I don't see them. I don't think they can skip USC. So
where were they?
maybe
Where were they again?
10.
I think they're eight. I think USC probably be 7. I think. Like who else is? I'm trying to think who's else in there.
It,
Ole Miss is still in there. I mean,
yeah, Ole Miss is still in there. They were 9, right? Or no, were they 7? Or they? I don't. I honestly don't remember. They or were they behind? Were they 11?
they might have been 11.
I don't. I,
Um,
I honestly don't remember. No, because TCU was 7. They were outside the top 6. So Oregon was 8, USC was 9, and LSU was 10. So
yeah.
I
So
mean,
I
I could
think,
see 9.
I think, I think USC will move up to 7, and I think LSU will move up to 8.
Who would be 9 then?
Right, Ole Miss.
Was Alabama 10?
Yeah, Alabama will be 9 or 10. I'm gonna say they're not gonna be in front of LSU, and so I'll say Bama will be a 9 or 10, and Ole Miss will be the other one.
I think I have mine the same as you. As far as the top 6 goes, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna give Michigan 2 and Ohio State number 3, though. I do think the last couple weeks Michigan has been more dominant than Ohio State. And I think the committee is going to kind of cite that as the year goes around. Michigan has just seems like a more controlling team. So I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. Obviously, that doesn't matter once you get to November 26th. So Buckeyes
Yeah.
just handle their business. Um, and they'll be fine. But I think right now in the rankings, we're going to see Michigan number 2 for the playoff.
Yeah. Um, just one more thing I wanted to hit, just real quickly. If some craziness, I mean, I don't. I think Georgia is obviously probably you know in the playoff, even if they lose in the conference championship game. If a two-loss LSU or a two-loss Ole Miss knock off Georgia, do you think if there has to be some other losses somewhere else, but do they get in? Does we finally see a two-loss team in the playoff if it's in the SEC and they're the
It's got
conference
it's
and they're
got
the
to be
conference?
LSU or Alabama.
You don't think Ole Miss could do it if somebody? I mean, I don't think.
Mm-mm. They don't have the cachet. They wouldn't let a 2-loss Ole Miss in. I don't think so at least, but I could be wrong. I mean, they love the SEC champion so much. So maybe, yeah. I don't. Now that I think about it, yeah, probably because it's the SEC champion, and that's just holds so much more weight than any other conference in the eyes of the playoff committee. Which I mean, they're not necessarily wrong about it, but I think that would be wrong for that. Um, I don't. I mean, can't give it to. You can't let one loss Georgia and one loss Tennessee in. That
No,
would
I
seem
think
right.
like I'm almost ready to say unless Georgia gets upset here twice in the next couple of weeks and Tennessee gets back into the conference championship. I don't see a path where Tennessee's getting in because honestly, I don't see them as long as that November 20 whatever eighth game is a good game or whatever. I don't see them able. I could see a one-loss Georgia at number one that loses their one loss in the conference championship game, staying in the playoff. But I don't see if Georgia goes undefeated, knocks out two-loss LSU, let's say, and then there's that one-loss Tennessee. I think almost I would have to say that I think the loser of the Ohio State Michigan game, as long as that game is a good game, is probably the fourth team in. Assuming TCU is, undefeated. But I could say that I think a conference championship, one loss at that point, it's either going to be an undefeated TCU as the third team. Let's say it's, Georgia's in, the Ohio State Michigan winner is in, you know, um, and that's undefeated Georgia, undefeated Ohio State or Michigan. You know, if TCU is still undefeated, they're in, and then it comes down to the one loss loser of Ohio State, Michigan. You know, the one loss Tennessee that doesn't even make a conference championship game neither, or possibly a one loss Oregon or USC sitting there in the Pac-12, and it'd probably be one of them would probably be number 4. So
Yeah.
because that would be a conference championship, and I would say they probably would be the deserving team at that point. So yeah, picture's a little clearer now that a couple teams have lost. It seems like Bama's out, but still football to go.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, I'm good to get on out of here if you are.
Yeah, sorry again about the voice. This has
Yeah,
been
Mike, rest up, get some hot tea. Try to get that voice back for our next show this week. But thank you everyone for stopping out tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
and I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.